The world of Dragon Ball was no stranger to apocalyptic tremors. From the clash of Goku and Piccolo at the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament to the casual planet-busting of the Namek saga, the Earth's very crust had become an unwilling seismograph for the universe's most potent power struggles. Yet the sound that shattered the tranquil pre-Cell Games afternoon was fundamentally different. It wasn't the signature, high-pitched, key shriek of a concentrated blast, nor the expanding, shimmering aura of a Saiyan transformation. It was a pure geological thud, a cataclysmic impact of mass and velocity that felt less like energy and more like the planet itself had been struck by a rogue, faster-than-light meteorite. The air didn't merely shake, it was physically displaced in a suffocating shockwave that flattened entire forests miles away from the impact point, leaving behind a continent-sized, smoking crater near the desolate mountains. On Kami's lookout, Piccolo, sitting cross-legged in meditation, snapped his eyes open, his antenna twitching. "That wasn't Kai," he stated, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that drew the attention of the others. It was something else, raw, brute force, but with a magnitude. Beside him, Goku, currently in his Super Saiyan state, prepping his body's reserves for the coming tournament, frowned. It felt heavy, like an asteroid crash, but moving with intent. He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. "And I can barely sense a life force. It's too faint, too small for the size of the impact. Like a pebble hit by a cannonball, the Kai is just insignificant compared to the physical force." Vegeta, whose pride was already bristling at the thought of Cell's superiority, crossed his arms with a dismissive "Humph." "Kakarot, your senses are dulled. It's an overwhelming power source, obviously. A new android, perhaps, another one of Jero's mistakes, seeking me out for a challenge." He started charging a sphere of purple energy in his palm, ready to obliterate the target. His scouter would have been useless even if he still used one, the device long since deemed obsolete in a world where power levels moved past the millions. But his warrior instinct registered the threat as a Category 5, requiring immediate and overwhelming response. Gohan, standing beside his father, nervously gripped his own guy. "The power feels cold, father. Not evil like Frieza, but indifferent." A second later, Goku was gone, leaving only a shimmering trace of yellow Super Saiyan energy hanging in the air. He used instant transmission, locking onto the nearest, most coherent life force signature, a young, panicked human reporter who had foolishly flown a helicopter too close to the blast zone. And then, once he was closer, he dropped the human and locked onto the peculiar life force at the epicenter of the destruction. He reappeared, hovering above the smoking, newly formed canyon. Below him, surrounded by pulverized granite and magma-hot, fused sand, was a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in a distinctive white and red uniform. The man was on one knee, his body visibly battered, his Viltrumite mustache singed, and a deep, bloody fissure running across his crimson armor. Nolan Grayson, better known as Omni-Man, had finally stopped falling. He looked up, his pale blue eyes adjusting to the strange, unfamiliar sun and the atmosphere's peculiar density. He had been fleeing an interdimensional ambush orchestrated by a coalition of hostile species outside the Viltrumite Empire, his ability to navigate the dimensional slipstream compromised, forcing a desperate, near-fatal blind jump. He had arrived in this universe with nothing but the clothes on his back, a splitting headache, and the ingrained knowledge that he was the strongest being in any room he occupied. "The natives are fast," Omni-Man muttered to himself, his internal monologue assessing the golden-haired man hovering above him. He detected incredible speed and a high physical output, but nothing that felt truly threatening. A primitive uniform, a theatrical pose, another high-powered soldier, no doubt, from a backward planet I'll have to pacify. Goku, sensing the man's immense, latent physical strength and the sheer, unbridled arrogance, offered a friendly wave. "Hey, glad you're okay. That was some crash. Are you injured? We have these things called senzu beans that can heal you completely." He descended slowly, keeping his distance, not sensing malice, but sensing an almost cosmic level of raw physical power. He had encountered aliens before, but this one's physical density felt like nothing he'd ever seen. Omni-Man pushed himself to his feet, a piece of rock the size of a small car dissolving into dust under his boot. "I am Omni-Man of the Viltrum Empire," he stated, his voice carrying the authority of a galactic conqueror. "Tell me, where am I and what is the nature of this planet's primary defense force? I have a mission to complete before the next cycle." He didn't ask if the planet had a defense force. He demanded to know its nature. The concept of not being the apex predator was alien to him. Goku tilted his head, the Super Saiyan aura shimmering around him. "Earth, and, well, we are. The defense force, my name's Goku. You want to fight? You look pretty strong. I'm training for a tournament right now, so a good spar would be awesome." He took a classic, ready stance, the thrill of a new, powerful challenge overriding any tactical concern. Omni-Man blinked, surprised by the naivety. "You want to fight? Against an agent of the Viltrumite Empire? You mistake this for a game, boy. My power is absolute. Stand down and state your planet's intentions, or I will initiate compliance procedures." He began to move, the speed of his motion causing a sonic boom that echoed the sound of his arrival. It was a pure, physical, blitzing attack designed to end the fight before the opponent could even register the threat. Goku, however, was already gone, having used instant transmission to reappear 30 feet to Omni-Man's left. He watched the man's physical blitz collide with the empty air, creating a vortex of compressed atmosphere that ripped through the canyon wall. "Whoa! You're fast!" Goku exclaimed, his smile widening. "But you're wasting a lot of energy. You need to control that better, like this." Goku cupped his hands to his side. Omni-Man, relying purely on his superior speed and hearing, registered the man's position and spun around instantly, throwing a colossal punch that carried the force of 1,000 megatons. It was the fist of a Viltrumite, a fist that could crack moons and shatter dimensions. It was met not by flesh, but by a pure, blue key wave of energy, the Kamehameha. Omni-Man's entire body was instantly enveloped in the explosive, superheated plasma. He felt the terrifying, searing energy wash over his frame, a pain that transcended mere physical trauma. His Viltrumite biology, which could easily withstand the heat of a planet's core, was being assaulted by an energy type it had never registered, Kai, which resonated against his very life force. He screamed, a sound that was instantly drowned out by the roar of the blast. When the smoke cleared, Omni-Man was hurled backward into a cliff face, which pulverized instantly. His armor was scorched, his skin blistered, and he was gasping for air, stunned less by the pain and more by the realization that a being whose physical strength felt inferior to his had just deployed a power source that felt like a localized supernova. "What was that?" Omni-Man demanded, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip, his arrogance momentarily replaced by genuine shock. Goku floated down, his ki aura fading slightly as he reverted to his base form to conserve energy. "That was a Kamehameha. It's an energy wave powered by my Kai. You have that energy too, but you're not using it. You're just fighting with muscle. If you learn to use your Kai, you'd be 10 times stronger." Before Omni-Man could process the concept of improving his inherent strength, Goku extended his hand with an open, friendly gesture. Seriously, are you okay? Come with me. We're fighting a really tough guy soon, Cell. He absorbs people. You'd make a great training partner and an even better ally. You're just fighting with a massive handicap right now. The offer was completely foreign to Omni-Man's way of thinking. In his universe, a strong warrior defeated the weak, killed them, and enslaved their planet. This strange, golden-haired warrior had just hit him with planet-shattering energy, yet now he was offering friendship and training. This planet, these beings are unlike any I have encountered. This new reality, where physical might was merely the starting line and true power was achieved through the mastery of an invisible energy force, instantly threw the entire Viltrumite philosophy of inherent, natural superiority into question. The fight hadn't been an assessment. It had been a humbling, painful lesson. He slowly accepted the hand, but Omni-Man's fighter instinct remained alert, his mind already calculating the new rules of this universe and how he could master this key energy faster than his host. Meanwhile, high above the atmosphere, a small, insect-like creature, Perfect Cell, observed the exchange with detached, cold curiosity, his multicellular body absorbing the raw data. Interesting. That physical shockwave registered as almost equal to my sustained energy output, but the creature has no finesse. It lacks scion cells. It lacks Frieza's lineage. Yet, if I could absorb that raw physical vitality, my perfect form would become truly, universally, absolute. Cell smiled, a predator having just spotted the biggest, rawest prey it had ever encountered. The Cell Games were only 10 days away, and the arrival of Omni-Man had just added an explosive, unpredictable variable to the apocalypse countdown: discipline. Yet the shock of the Kamehameha and the realization that Goku's physical body, which Omni-Man correctly assessed as less physically dense than his own, could channel energy capable of melting his hyper-durable skin, forced a re-evaluation of his entire combat philosophy. He was a god-level warrior operating in a world where gods started at a completely different power tier. Goku transported Omni-Man and himself instantly back to Kami's lookout, where the remaining Z fighters were waiting, tense and ready for a confrontation. "Hey guys, this is Omni-Man! He's super strong physically, but he doesn't know how to use Kai yet," Goku announced cheerfully, completely sidestepping the tension in the atmosphere. The reception was decidedly mixed. Krillin and Yamcha took a wary step back, sensing the raw, untamed power radiating from the alien's physical form. Tien, ever the dedicated martial artist, eyed Omni-Man with professional curiosity. But it was Piccolo who stepped forward, his Namekian antennae flaring, his arms crossed over his chest. "Physical power without spiritual control is just a crude weapon," Piccolo stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "Your crash was destructive and aimless. The energy you possess, Viltrumite, is immense, but your ignorance of Kai is a fatal flaw in this universe." Omni-Man, already chafing at the word flaw, glared at the towering green warrior. "My physical strength alone is enough to crack your planet open, Namekian. I have faced opponents who could destroy star systems with technology. Your invisible key is merely a parlor trick I have not yet deconstructed." Piccolo scoffed, the sound of ancient wisdom meeting modern arrogance. "Then let us have a lesson." He floated slightly off the ground, raising a single finger to his forehead. "Goku already showed you the force of a broad blast. I will show you the precision and lethality of true ki control." Before Omni-Man could move, Piccolo focused his energy, not for a special beam cannon which required charging time, but for a simple, concentrated Kai projectile, a focused, needle-thin beam of pure white energy. He fired it not at Omni-Man's core, but at his shoulder armor, a spot the Viltrumite's anatomy could easily ignore. The Kai blast hit, Instead of exploding, it drilled through the super-durable Viltrumite armor plating with the sound of tearing metal and a flash of white heat, embedding itself harmlessly a millimeter deep into the underlying muscle tissue before Piccolo released the energy. Omni-Man gasped, stunned not by the pain, but by the fact that the key had bypassed his physical density. The energy hadn't pushed him, it had pierced him. In his universe, high-powered, attacks either vaporized or they were ignored. This was a completely new vulnerability, precision energy that acted like a scalpel against his armor's overwhelming blunt resistance. Piccolo dropped back down. That level of control is basic in this world. A minute of sustained fire from any of us could cripple you. Your muscle memory is all speed and blunt force. Your true energy, the one that registered so faintly during your crash, is dormant. You are a ship with a nuclear reactor running at idle, trying to race a jet fighter. The comparison stung. Omni-Man was used to being the jet fighter. How do I access this? Kai! Omni-Man demanded, a raw mix of shame and warrior pride in his voice. Goku beamed. Easy, you train. It's all about focus, meditation, and letting your spirit flow. Your body already has enough power to shatter worlds. You just need to put a straw in the universe's energy drink. Piccolo's right, though. The androids and Cell fight with energy blasts and overwhelming power. Your physical strength won't be enough to protect you from a final flash or a focused Kamehameha from Cell. Just as Omni-Man's mind was reeling from the possibility of exponential power growth, a voice laced with pure, unadulterated arrogance cut through the air. Another fool who thinks brute force is the peak of existence. Vegeta, having used his superior speed to catch up, landed heavily on the lookout platform, his arms crossed, his Super Saiyan aura flaring with contained rage. He had spent the last 7 months training in the hyperbolic time chamber and had reached a new level of power, yet his ki sense told him this newcomer possessed a raw, intimidating physical presence that felt like a slap to his Saiyan pride. "I saw the crater you left, alien." Vegeta spat out the last word, like poison. "You fight with no grace, no technique, only muscle. You are exactly what the Saiyans were before they learned of true power. Kakarot, stop offering him friendship and offer him a challenge. A warrior like that only understands disrespect." Vegeta instantly transformed into his ascended Super Saiyan state. A bulkier, more intensely muscled form he still believed offered the ultimate power, and immediately rushed Omni-Man. This wasn't a spar, it was an attempt to assert dominance. "You will address me as the Prince of all Saiyans, and you will learn your place," Vegeta roared, launching a rapid-fire succession of energy-reinforced punches and kicks. This time, Omni-Man was ready for the physical exchange. Vegeta's speed was impressive, even for a Viltrumite. The Saiyan Prince moved with the practiced, honed malice of a born killer. The two collided in a spectacular low-kai, high physical battle that shook the very foundations of the lookout. Boom! A punch from Omni-Man, carrying the force of a seismic event, caught Vegeta in the gut. The Saiyan Prince doubled over, coughing up a plume of blood, but his body was reinforced by his Super Saiyan ki, allowing him to absorb the purely physical impact that would have atomized a lesser being. Vegeta instantly retaliated, driving a Kai-infused knee upward. The focused energy, guided by Vegeta's precise control, bypassed Omni-Man's physical density and struck his internal organs, causing the Viltrumite to momentarily black out from the sheer, burning agony. They broke apart, both warriors panting, bloodied, and bearing the scars of their new power dynamics. Vegeta was bleeding, but grinning maniacally. His pride was reaffirmed. Omni-Man was whole, but his spirit was shattered. His worldview was disintegrating. "You are strong," Omni-Man gritted out, his voice a ragged whisper. "But your power has limits. I have no limits to my physical growth." Vegeta laughed, a cold, terrible sound. "You're a fool. That Kai strike wasn't even a fraction of my true strength. You rely on what your genes gave you. I rely on what my pride and will force me to become. Now watch the true power of a Saiyan prince." Vegeta pushed his hands out to the side, concentrating every fiber of his being. The shimmering, violent Super Saiyan aura around him intensified, becoming a raging supernova of golden light that cracked the ground beneath the lookout platform. This is the final flash, a technique designed to obliterate even the very atoms of your being. Your muscle will not save you from this. The sheer Kai pressure radiating from Vegeta's charging attack was unlike anything Omni-Man had ever registered. He felt his Viltrumite body, which could fly through a black hole's event horizon, tremble in genuine fear. He knew with absolute terrifying certainty that if he were to be hit by that blast, he would not be injured. He would be utterly, completely annihilated. His physical form was simply a vessel for a level of raw, inherent power that had been surpassed by a level of trained, spiritual power. Goku, however, intervened instantly, using his sheer speed to jump between the two warriors, his hand raised. "Stop, Vegeta! He's not the enemy! We need his physical strength. He can beat Cell if he learns Kai." Vegeta, still seething, slowly dissipated the colossal energy of the final flash, but the warning was clear. Omni-Man now understood this universe is ruled not by what you are born with, but by how relentlessly you train and how fiercely your will burns. "Kakarot is right, Viltrumite," Vegeta growled, turning away. "You are an insult to a warrior's bloodline right now. You are physically capable of destroying worlds, yet powerless before a focused ki strike. If you want to survive Cell, you need to train. The hyperbolic time chamber is waiting. 1 year's worth of training in 1 day. Do not emerge until you have mastered this ki, or I will kill you myself just to cleanse your arrogance from this planet." The ultimatum was the closest thing to respect Omni-Man had ever received from a true rival. He looked from the retreating Vegeta to the expectant Goku, his gaze finally settling on the distant, silent threat of the impending Cell Games. Training, 1 year in a day. Omni-Man made his choice, his Viltrumite pride taking a new, terrifying form, the pride of endless improvement. The hyperbolic time chamber was, by every metric, an impossible environment. The white, sterile void that stretched into infinity, the 10 times normal Earth gravity, the crushing silence, and the bizarre temporal dilation, 1 year inside equaled 1 day outside, was a training tool straight out of science fiction. For a Viltrumite, whose powers were already based on defying basic physics, the gravity was a minor discomfort, but the temporal distortion was a terrifying mind break. "Okay, Nolan," Goku said, using Omni-Man's given name. Goku, in his Super Saiyan form, was relaxed and cheerful, treating the impossible environment like a nice picnic spot. "First lesson, Kai is your life force. It flows from your core, your spirit. You're flying with muscle, but you could be flying with will. Try to hold this," Goku demonstrated, cupping his hands and slowly drawing a small, shimmering sphere of pure, golden ki between his palms. It was a miniature sun, contained and controlled. Omni-Man attempted the exercise. He closed his eyes, meditated in the Viltrumite way, by visualizing every bone, every muscle fiber, and every biological process in his body operating at peak efficiency, and then tried to force the energy out. He grunted, strained, and focused the formidable will of a galactic conqueror. The only result was a blinding white-hot flash of raw power that erupted from his core and dissipated instantly. He had successfully released energy, but it was uncontrolled, messy, and useless in combat. "No, no, no, don't force it, Nolan, flow with it!" Goku gently admonished, his voice full of the patience of a seasoned master. "You're a Viltrumite. You're strong because you are strong. But Kai is about control. It's about the spirit. It's not about being strong. It's about being calm and focused." The next few months of the Chamber's time were a continuous exercise in frustration for the Viltrumite. Nolan was used to a world where his inherent physical superiority was the solution to every problem. Here, he was being asked to discard that instinct for a delicate, spiritual mastery that felt beneath him. He could still move at near FTL speeds, punch holes through the chamber's walls, which Goku instantly repaired with a ki blast, and survive for weeks without sleep, but he could not channel the invisible energy. The inability to produce a basic Kai blast, something even Krillin, the strongest human, could do, was a constant, debilitating affront to his pride. "You're a warrior, Nolan," Goku urged during a break, munching on a sandwich he had brought from the outside world. "Think about protecting your son, Mark. Think about why you fight." Protect Mark? The thought of his son, and the fear that a powerful, energy-wielding creature in his own universe could do to him what Vegeta's final flash had almost done to Nolan, gave him the first proper catalyst. The Viltrumite's core drive was always survival and superiority, but here, the core drive of protection suddenly became the key to unlocking the power. He sat again, but this time he didn't visualize muscle or bone. He visualized the feeling of the Kamehameha striking him, the fear of Vegeta's final flash, and the need to protect the Viltrumite Empire's destiny from the ki-wielding threats of this universe. His purpose wasn't might, it was safety through superior technique. In the Dragon Ball universe, protection is the ultimate power source. As Nolan sat, something shifted. The furious, raw energy he had released before began to stabilize, transforming from a chaotic flash into a contained, shimmering, purple-white aura that hugged his body. It was a unique, condensed energy, different from the Saiyan's golden Kai, but recognizable as pure, focused energy manipulation. "Yes, that's it. You're focusing the ki right into your core," Goku cheered, dropping his sandwich in excitement. "Now try to push it out, slowly, like a ripple in a pond." With painstaking effort, Omni-Man channeled the stabilized Kai into his outstretched hand. The energy coalesced not into a sphere, but into a hyperdense, violet beam, a pure, straight line of energy that sliced through the fabric of the empty dimension until it was lost in the vast white void. It wasn't the explosive power of a Kamehameha, but the sheer, condensed force and lethality of the beam was terrifying. He had developed his own ki technique, the Viltrumite Nova Beam. For the next 6 months of chamber time, Omni-Man practiced relentlessly. He learned to reinforce his already unbreakable body with the ki aura, a form of defense that made him invulnerable to anything short of a direct, charged attack from a Super Saiyan. He learned to channel the energy through his fists, making his physical strikes even more devastating. He learned to fly by ki manipulation, which conserved the energy he previously burned with brute force speed. He was still years away from achieving a Super Saiyan transformation, but he had adapted to the rules of this universe and had turned his inherent strength into a base for an exponential power increase. He had become Omni-Man, ki-adapted. On the 365th day, the door to the hyperbolic time chamber opened, releasing a powerful gust of wind and heat. Goku, radiating the calm power of a full-power Super Saiyan, stepped out, followed by Omni-Man, who now carried himself not just with arrogance, but with the quiet, focused power of a true martial artist. His armor gleamed with a faint, violet sheen of contained Kai. The Earth's remaining defenders, Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Vegeta, and Gohan, were gathered on the lookout, the air tense with the impending threat. Cell's ultimatum, 10 days until the Cell Games, had expired. "Welcome back, Kakarot," Vegeta grunted, eyeing the newcomer. He was looking not for physical strength, but for the subtle, spiritual change. He sensed it instantly, a new, focused core of energy within the Viltrumite's immense frame. Did the alien learn his lesson? "He's good, Vegeta. Really good," Goku said, beaming. His physical punches now have a Kai punch behind them, and he can fly without getting tired. Just as they were discussing the new strategy for the impending tournament, the massive, perfect form of Cell appeared hovering over the lookout, his green and black carapace shimmering in the afternoon sun, radiating a chilling, overwhelming energy. "Ah, the pathetic insects have gathered," Cell purred, his voice a mocking imitation of the Z-Fighters' own voices. "And look, a new plaything, an impressive energy signature that appeared and disappeared, only to re-emerge, trained by the very vermin I'm about to crush. Did you think a mere year of training could stop me, Goku?" Cell directed his attention to Omni-Man. "I observed your battles, Viltrumite. Your raw strength is appealing. It is the perfect, concentrated essence of primitive power. Unlike the soft minds of these Earthlings, your purpose is clear. Conquest. That makes you a worthy ingredient." Cell thrust his hand forward and fired a brilliant, massive, golden Kamehameha at the lookout. A destructive attack designed to wipe the slate clean before the main event. In the instant before the blast hit, Omni-Man acted. He raised his hands, focusing his newly mastered ki into a perfect, purple barrier that instantly met the overwhelming golden energy. The two forces collided in a spectacular, multicolored explosion that rattled the planet. Omni-Man held the blast, his newly acquired Kai screaming under the immense pressure, his knees buckling, but his Viltrumite will, reinforced by the concept of protection, refusing to yield. He felt his Viltrumite Nova Beam struggling to punch through the thick Kai of Cell's blast, showing him just how far the gap remained. "I will not be absorbed, creature," Omni-Man roared, channeling the agony into raw power. "I am Omni-Man, and this world is under my protection now." The initial salvo had been a stalemate, proving Omni-Man had officially joined the high-power combatants of the Dragon Ball universe. But the brief exchange also proved that while he had closed the gap in terms of Kai control, Perfect Cell still held the overwhelming power advantage. The Cell Games were about to begin, and a Viltrumite had just entered the ring. The collision of Omni-Man's defensive ki barrier and Perfect Cell's surprise Kamehameha ended with a blinding flash and a shockwave that blasted all the Z-Fighters back. When the dust settled, the top of Kami's lookout was scorched black, but intact. Omni-Man stood at the epicenter, his armor slightly smoking, his stance wide, confirming that his physical strength, when combined with Kai reinforcement, was now capable of tanking attacks that could vaporize mountains. Cell merely laughed, a sound of grating satisfaction. "Most impressive, Viltrumite. You have learned your party trick, but a shield is not a sword, and my Saiyan cells are already calculating your rate of improvement. I look forward to absorbing that potential." With a final, taunting grin, Cell instantly flew away, declaring the Cell Games a desperate tournament to decide the fate of Earth would begin tomorrow. The remaining hours were spent in urgent strategy sessions at Capsule Corp, the tension suffocating. Omni-Man, now a member of the Defense Force, sat quietly, observing the complex dynamics of the group. He saw the cold, determined logic of Piccolo, the quiet, immense power lurking in Gohan, and the familiar, burning Saiyan pride in Vegeta. But it was Vegeta who sought him out, cornering Omni-Man in one of Capsule Corp's vast, pressurized training rooms. "The tournament starts tomorrow," Vegeta stated, his eyes fixed on the Viltrumite. "Kakarot will fight first, then the rest of us. Your immense physical strength is now a factor, but your lack of transformation makes you slow to scale. Your key adaptation is merely a footnote. Omni-Man met the Saiyan Prince's gaze with newfound respect. Your final flash was a lesson, Vegeta. My strength is absolute, but my method was lacking. I will not be your footnote. We are similar, Viltrumite, Vegeta admitted, a rare moment of introspection. You rule through inherent superiority, and I rule through pride. But here, our pride is pointless if it cannot overcome this wretched insect. I offer you a truth. You learned Kai for protection. You need to learn it for conquest. Vegeta walked closer, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. I have trained for years to surpass Kakarot. That insolent fool will go first. I will not fight Cell until I have observed him fully. You will take the second match after Kakarot fails. Why? Omni-Man asked, his curiosity genuinely piqued by the Saiyan strategy. Because you are a sacrificial pawn I can afford to waste. If you force Cell to show his true speed and true power beyond what he used against Kakarot, it will give me the data I need for my ultimate victory, Vegeta said, his plan brutal and self-serving. You will use your Viltrumite Nova Beam and your enhanced physical strength to batter him, forcing him to expend energy and perhaps reveal a weakness. In return, I will train you immediately after we defeat Cell, if you survive. Omni-Man recognized the cold, ruthless logic of a true conqueror, which mirrored the Viltrumite Empire's own methodology. He preferred this honesty to Goku's naive optimism. I accept your terms, Prince, Omni-Man responded, the title now carrying a hint of genuine acknowledgement. But my purpose is not to be a pawn, it is to survive, conquer, and protect. If Cell shows a weakness, I will exploit it, not reserve it for your benefit. Vegeta grinned, a rare, chilling flash of white teeth. Good, I wouldn't have it any other way. Now leave. I need to meditate on the perfect angle for my final flash. The next day, the Cell Games Arena, a bizarrely constructed ring-out-style fighting stage, became the focal point of the world's attention. The atmosphere was a surreal mix of a professional wrestling spectacle and a military execution. Cell appeared, confident and smiling, ready to play his deadly game. The Z-Fighters landed, grim and prepared. As expected, Goku initiated the first battle, a spectacular display of controlled power, speed, and technique, primarily using his Super Saiyan form. Omni-Man watched the fight, his newly developed ki sense allowing him to track the movements of both fighters. Speed that previously would have registered only as a blur now broke down into discrete, focused motions. He realized the true difference between them. Goku was fighting with finesse and control, conserving energy, testing Cell's limits, and seeking a weakness. Omni-Man would have gone in with a full-speed blitz and relentless physical assault, which he now knew would have been a quick path to a defeat by absorption. The fight reached its climax when Goku seemingly surrendered, admitting he couldn't defeat Perfect Cell. The world was shocked, but the Z-Fighters understood. Goku had learned all he could from this round. "It's your turn, Gohan," Goku said, gesturing to his son. "No!" Vegeta instantly countered, his eyes locked on Omni-Man. "The Viltrumite is next. Kakarot, your son is too weak-willed and soft to fight this creature. The alien has the raw killer instinct. He'll soften the target for me." Goku, normally against such a dangerous choice, saw the logic. "Cell needs to be pushed harder, Gohan. Nolan, you're up. Remember your training. Use your Nova Beam to keep him off balance." Omni-Man flew to the ring, landing across from Perfect Cell. Cell smirked, stretching his massive arms. "The brute returns. Did the weakling teach you how to fire a proper Kamehameha yet? No matter. You are the perfect raw material for my body, a pure power source, untainted by the sentimental foolishness of Saiyan rage." "I am not a power source, creature," Omni-Man declared, his voice low and dangerous. "I am the standard by which all other power is measured. Your perfection is a momentary plateau. Mine is a perpetual journey." The fight began with a deafening boom that made the arena crack. Omni-Man didn't hold back. He launched into a full-speed, ki-reinforced blitz, combining his Viltrumite speed with his newly focused ki aura. He struck Cell with a devastating flurry of punches, each one carrying the force of a nuclear bomb and reinforced by his nascent ki control. Cell was visibly shocked by the sudden, overwhelming escalation in physical force. He was knocked backward, his carapace cracking under the repeated onslaught, the impact tearing up the ring's surface. "Impressive!" Cell roared, instantly recovering thanks to his Piccolo cells. "The Viltrumite's strength is overwhelming, but your technique is still too blunt." Cell retaliated, not with a physical strike, but with a rapid succession of ki blasts, thousands of small, precise, focused energy attacks that struck Omni-Man from every direction, bypassing his physical density and forcing him to expend massive amounts of his precious newfound Kai to defend. The battle became a chaotic blend of physical might and energy defense. Omni-Man would blitz, Cell would counter with energy waves, and Omni-Man would be forced to retreat, his Kai reserves slowly draining. Pushed to his limit, Omni-Man used the only new attack he had mastered. He charged his core, feeling the familiar, terrifying pressure build in his chest, and then fired his concentrated violet Viltrumite Nova Beam straight at Cell's face. Cell, surprised by the sudden, focused lethality, had no choice but to block with both arms, creating a defensive ki barrier. The clash was immediate and deafening. Omni-Man held the beam for as long as his ki reserves allowed, the beam slowly forcing Cell backward, scorching the ground with its immense heat. But then, Cell saw his opportunity. As Omni-Man's reserves flagged, Cell launched his unique, ki-reinforced tail with the lightning-fast speed of an ancient predator. The tip of the tail, designed for absorption, shot out, intent on piercing the Viltrumite's body. "Now I absorb your physical strength," Cell shouted, his intent clear. Omni-Man, fighting on pure instinct, saw the tail coming, but knew his speed, even with Kai enhancement, was not enough to avoid it. His training had taught him a counter. Remembering Goku's brief demonstration, Omni-Man instantly focused all his remaining ki onto the location of Krillin, who was safely watching the fight. With a final, agonizing effort, he executed a perfect, if clumsy, instant transmission, disappearing from the ring a millisecond before Cell's tail could pierce his armor. He reappeared, staggering next to Krillin, clutching his core, his body completely drained of Kai. He had survived, but he had lost. He had pushed Cell harder than Goku had, forcing the bio-android to reveal his full, brutal power, but he had been unable to secure the victory. The physical exhaustion was immense, but the spiritual realization was greater. His inherent strength was an outdated engine in a world of ki mastery and Saiyan transformations. Omni-Man's retreat via instant transmission, executed on the razor-thin margin between life and absorption, was a tactical masterstroke. However, it was also a crushing defeat for the Viltrumite spirit. He collapsed next to Krillin, sweat pouring from his body, his unique Viltrumite biology already attempting to regenerate the severe ki depletion that had left him weaker than a common earthling. I should have finished him, Omni-Man gasped, watching as Cell merely stood in the ring, disappointed but unfazed by the sudden loss of an exciting fight. My Nova Beam, it wasn't enough. Goku, ever the optimist, rushed over and handed Omni-Man a Senzu beam. Don't worry, Nolan. You did great. You forced him to show his true speed. Take this. Omni-Man hesitated, but the promise of instant recovery was too tempting. He swallowed the beam, and the effect was immediate and astonishing. His physical trauma vanished. His muscles instantly surged with renewed vigor. and most importantly, his depleted Chi reserves instantly refilled to 100%. This is an item of god-level utility, Omni-Man murmured, staring at the small, green bean in his hand. The sheer potential of this universe's resources is baffling. A physical strength that can destroy planets, a spiritual energy that can destroy dimensions, and a common being that can fully heal all wounds. But before Omni-Man could fully process his new reality, the inevitable happened. Gohan was called to the ring. "Gohan, you're up," Goku said, his expression serious. "You have the hidden power. You have to let it out. Don't hold back. You're the only one who can beat Cell." Gohan, still a gentle, peaceful scholar at heart, reluctantly stepped forward. The ensuing fight was an agonizing spectacle for all the Z fighters, but especially for Omni-Man. The Viltrumite had spent his life believing that ruthless, cold-blooded efficiency was the ultimate form of strength. He had watched Vegeta's pride and Goku's kindness, and now he was watching Gohan's timidity. Cell, frustrated by Gohan's reluctance to fight at full power, resorted to sheer cruelty to trigger the boy's hidden potential. He unleashed the Cell Juniors, miniature, highly powered versions of himself, and ordered them to systematically and brutally torture the Z fighters. Omni-Man, fully recovered and fueled by the Senzu Bean's restoration, immediately flew to the aid of the struggling humans. He engaged two Cell Juniors simultaneously, his Chi-reinforced fists and high-velocity physical strikes finally operating against targets who were a manageable threat level. Boom! Crack! Omni-Man tore through the Cell Juniors with ruthless efficiency. His physical punches, now fully charged with Chi, were powerful enough to destroy the miniature organisms with a single, devastating blow. He was a force of nature, a machine of pure, optimized destruction. However, as he was dispatching the second Cell Junior with a particularly brutal combination of a spine-crushing physical slam and a concentrated Nova Beam, he saw Gohan watching him. The boy was paralyzed, his mind reeling from the violence. But instead of seeing a protector, Omni-Man saw a young warrior being pushed to the brink of a dangerous, uncontrolled rage, the kind of rage Omni-Man had always used to dominate. "He's right," Gohan whispered to himself, his power momentarily surging at the sight of his friends being beaten. "My father, my friends, even this strange alien, they are all fighting for me to unleash the strength I don't want." Then Cell committed the ultimate act of cruelty. He casually crushed Android 16, a noble, peaceful machine, before Gohan's eyes. Pop, crack. The sound of the android's head being crushed was the final trigger. In that instant, Gohan's gentle persona shattered. The quiet, timid boy was replaced by a screaming, raging, golden-haired warrior. The surrounding air went dead silent, only to be instantly replaced by a deafening, terrifying roar. Gohan transformed, ascending past the traditional Super Saiyan form, his hair spikier, his aura crackling with violent, untamed electricity. Super Saiyan 2 had arrived. The sheer, overwhelming surge of Chi was a physical phenomenon. The entire Cell Games arena cracked and began to levitate under the sheer, uncontrollable magnitude of the power. Omni-Man stopped fighting the Cell Juniors, his eyes wide in disbelief. His key sense was instantly overwhelmed, screaming at a power level that shattered all previous assumptions about the universe. He registered Goku's full-power SSJ form as a roaring inferno, but Gohan's SSJ-2 was a supernova. The Viltrumite, who believed his strength was limitless, had just witnessed the breaking of a limit that he hadn't even known existed. The concept of a power multiplier through emotional catalyst was utterly foreign to his biological supremacy worldview. Gohan, now radiating the terrifying cold energy of SSJ-2, instantly turned his focus to the Cell Juniors. He didn't use an energy blast, he used pure, unadulterated physical speed and strength, moving faster than Omni-Man had ever moved, and striking with a force that obliterated the Cell Juniors into vaporized dust with casual, detached ease. Omni-Man watched his defeated opponent, a Cell Junior he had painstakingly defeated with focused Nova beams and Kai-reinforced punches, be erased from existence by a mere flick of Gohan's transformed hand. The raw speed, the cold, absolute strength, his power is exponentially greater than mine now. That's a Super Saiyan 2, Goku explained quietly, a strange mixture of pride and fear in his voice. He's just showing off how much faster and stronger he is now. He could wipe out Cell, the arena, and the planet in a second if he wanted to. Omni-Man's entire existence was rocked. His physical prowess, his Viltrumite pride, and his philosophical belief in inherited superiority were utterly demolished. The goal was no longer merely to survive Cell. The goal was to understand and achieve the level of power that a child on a hostile planet could achieve through emotional breaking. The fight for Earth was now Gohan's solo mission. He engaged Perfect Cell in a battle that redefined the scale of power for the entire universe. Cell, forced to use his absolute maximum power, was still casually overwhelmed. The Viltrumites' initial assessment of Cell as an absolute threat was revealed to be a massive understatement, and the power required to defeat him was equally absurd. Then Gohan made his first and greatest mistake. Intoxicated by his power, he decided to torture Cell, giving the bio-android the opening he needed. Cell, in a final desperate act, charged himself with energy, intending to blow himself and the Earth to pieces, knowing Gohan's pride would prevent him from immediately killing him. The explosion, a localized supernova, was inevitable. Goku, sensing the danger, instantly executed an instant transmission to Cell and took the self-destructing monster to King Kai's planet, sacrificing himself to save Earth. The shockwave and the sorrow were immense. Omni-Man watched the departure, his mind a hurricane of new data. Emotional Catalyst unlocks true power. SSJ2. Ki Mastery allows for exponential growth beyond physical limits. Sacrifice for others is a concept this universe's heroes embrace completely. Then the unthinkable happened. A single, powerful golden ki blast tore through the atmosphere, originating from the void of space. Cell, now in his super-perfect form, having survived the explosion and gained a Zenkai boost, had returned. He had instantly killed future Trunks upon his arrival, the sheer malice of the act a new low. Now, the final act, Cell cackled, his power level even higher than before. The Super Saiyan 2 is now facing true universal despair. Omni-Man, watching the broken, injured Gohan, now facing a threat even greater than the one he had just fought, felt the familiar Viltrumite fire flare in his core. It wasn't the arrogant fire of superiority, it was the ferocious, primal fire of protecting the one who sacrifices for the planet. I will not allow this world's protector to fall alone. Omni-Man had adapted his Kai for defense. Now he would force it into a transformation for retaliation. The return of Super Perfect Cell, infused with the combined Zenkai boost of near-death experience, Piccolo's regeneration, Frieza's malice, and the Saiyan's ability to grow stronger, was the darkest moment in the history of the Cell games. His power now eclipsed even the raging SSJ2 Gohan, whose spirit was broken by his father's sacrifice and the immediate death of future Trunks. "You have lost, boy," Cell announced, his voice vibrating with victorious power. "And now, I shall cleanse this planet with a Kamehameha that will erase all life. Your sacrifice, Goku, was meaningless." Gohan stood alone, one arm crippled, his ki reserves depleted by the earlier battle. He was physically and spiritually exhausted, yet his warrior's pride prevented him from surrendering. It was then that Omni-Man moved. His body, now fully integrated with Kai adaptation, recognized the primal threat and the necessary response. This wasn't about a duel, it was about protecting a newly understood concept of goodness. "You will not attack this child creature," Omni-Man declared, his voice echoing with authority as he stood between Cell and the broken Gohan. Cell chuckled, the sound devoid of all humor. "The foolish brute returns. Your power is pathetic next to mine, Viltrumite. My key sense registers you as barely a fraction of the boy's strength. Your presence is an inconvenience, nothing more." "Perhaps," Omni-Man conceded, his eyes closed for a brief, intense second as he channeled his inner fury. "But I have learned a valuable lesson here. Strength is not just physical. It is the ability to break your own limits for a cause." Omni-Man focused his gaze on the broken Gohan. He saw the sheer, violent magnitude of the Super Saiyan 2 transformation, a form powered by uncontrollable rage. He could never achieve the full, pure fury of a Saiyan, but he could channel the cold, efficient Viltrumite rage of a conqueror forced to defend his temporary home. He drew upon the collective strength of his Viltrumite spirit, the endless pursuit of superiority, the refusal to surrender, and the newfound drive to protect the Saiyan Prince's heir, a being who had shown him the way to true, boundless power. "I will not be the footnote. I will not be the pawn. I will not be surpassed by a child." A unique, violent, white-hot Kai began to emanate from Omni-Man's body. It wasn't the placid, violet hue of his Nova beam. It was a ferocious, crackling, white-purple aura that resembled a controlled, volatile supernova. His physical body, already the pinnacle of durability, pushed further. The veins on his arms pulsed with Kai energy, his muscles swelled, and the Viltrumite markings on his suit glowed with a feral intensity. He was not a Super Saiyan, he was a Viltrumite, Kiraj embodied. A temporary, self-destructive transformation born of a forced adaptation to the Dragon Ball universe's power scaling. It was a multiplier achieved not by genetics but by the overwhelming will to break limits. "The fool has gained a slight power increase," Cell scoffed, but his voice carried a hint of surprise. "A controlled, minor Zenkai of the spirit, still inadequate." "Let's test that theory," Omni-Man challenged. He executed an impossibly fast, ki-boosted blitz, appearing instantly in front of Cell, striking with a thunderous punch to the bio-android's face. The punch connected with a sound like a world cracking open. Cell was knocked sideways, a thin line of green blood trickling from his lip. It was the first time Super Perfect Cell had been physically injured in his final form. "Impossible!" Cell roared, enraged that his perfection had been marred by a mere brute. The battle that followed was a clash of two forms of perfection. Cell utilized his strategic, Kai-heavy style, firing massive Gallic guns and death beams with pinpoint accuracy. Omni-Man, in his temporary Ki-Rage form, ignored the technique, using his pure physical strength to batter through the blasts. He moved too fast for Cell's strategy, creating a chaotic maelstrom of destruction. Omni-Man was fighting with one strategy: get close, stay physical, and utilize the Nova Beam as a concentrated internal strike. He landed repeated devastating blows, each one pushing Cell further into a physical retreat. Crack! Boom! Omni-Man caught Cell with a vicious knee to the spine, forcing the bio-android to cough up a large amount of blood. The Viltrumite was pushing him beyond his regenerative capacity, but the transformation was temporary. Omni-Man's body, not designed for Kai manipulation on this scale, was burning itself out. The white-hot aura began to flicker. Cell noticed instantly. "Your body is failing, Viltrumite. Your will is immense, but your biology is still too primitive to sustain this power. Now you die." Cell charged his ultimate attack, a planet-destroying solar Kamehameha, focusing every ounce of his new power into a single, overwhelming beam.
"If I die, I will take you with me," Omni-Man screamed, his aura almost completely faded, his body reverting to its exhausted, Kai-depleted base form. He rushed forward, intending to wrap his arms around Cell and execute a self-destruct physical explosion, forcing the bioandroid's destruction alongside his own. He was too late. The massive Kamehameha was fired, heading straight for the collapsed, injured Gohan and the defenseless Earth. "No!" Gohan cried out, his strength returning in a sudden, final surge of SSJ2 power. But he could only muster a thin, one-handed Kamehameha to meet the unstoppable force of Cell's blast. The struggle was immediate and one-sided. Cell's blast quickly overwhelmed Gohan's. It was then that Vegeta intervened. Seeing Gohan's imminent defeat and the destruction of the planet, the Saiyan Prince, in a rare act of self-sacrificing compassion, fired a massive final flash at Super Perfect Cell, momentarily stunning the monster and distracting him just long enough for the balance of power in the
Kamehameha struggled to shift. Omni-Man, witnessing the power of Saiyan pride and Saiyan sacrifice, the very concepts he had derided as weakness, found his final catalyst. He focused his gaze on the tiny, spectral image of Goku, who was watching from the afterlife, and then on the straining, injured Gohan. The cold, efficient Viltrumite conqueror was gone. He was replaced by a protector with a pure heart. "I am the standard by which all power is measured," Omni-Man roared, channeling the last desperate flicker of his unique ki and throwing himself at the solar Kamehameha beam itself. He didn't try to stop it. He flew into the blast, becoming a physical projectile traveling at a speed that shattered the light barrier straight towards Cell's core, using his body to shield Gohan's blast from the overwhelming energy. The image that reached the terrified Earthlings was simple, a small, purple Viltrumite figure flying at impossible speed through a world-ending energy beam, acting as the ultimate shield for the planet. Omni-Man's final act of desperation was not an attack, it was a physical reinforcement. His durable Viltrumite body, already at the peak of physical density, became the ultimate ki lens. Flying directly into the solar Kamehameha, he focused his dying, flickering Ki-Raj aura and his incredible mass into the stream of energy, guiding the powerful blast just enough to graze Cell's outstretched arm instead of hitting the bioandroid's core. The concentrated energy, augmented by Omni-Man's physical push, ripped through the air, forcing Cell's attention onto the immediate threat. Cell, enraged by the distraction, unleashed the full power of the blast, catching Omni-Man in the immediate vicinity of the explosion. Boom! The resulting blast was immense, ripping a hole in the fabric of the Earth's atmosphere. When the light subsided, Cell stood, his concentration broken, his arm damaged by his own deflected blast, but otherwise whole. Omni-Man was gone, presumed vaporized in the attack. Such pathetic sacrifices, Cell sneered, shaking his damaged arm. This planet continues to choose the path of the weak-willed over the path of perfection. Now, Gohan, end this, or I will destroy your world with a mere thought. But the distraction had been enough. Vegeta's final flash had stunned Cell, and Omni-Man's physical intervention, by deflecting the main power of the Kamehameha, had bought the necessary seconds for Gohan. Gohan, seeing the silent testament of the Viltrumite sacrifice and hearing the distant spectral encouragement of his father, channeled the entirety of his SSJ2 power into his final, one-handed Kamehameha. The blast, now carrying the righteous fury of all the Z-fighters, erupted from his palm. The two forces met, Gohan's blast against Cell's remaining energy. It was the climactic, terrifying father-son Kamehameha, only this time it was a battle of two forces of will. Cell pushed with his perfected power, but Gohan pushed with the power of protection and redemption. The final surge of Gohan's power was enough. The sheer force of the SSJ-2 Kamehameha overwhelmed Cell's blast, slamming into the monster and instantly obliterating him, cell by cell, until nothing but a distant spark of energy remained. Perfect Cell was defeated. The threat to Earth was over. The Z-fighters rushed to the scene. Gohan collapsed in exhaustion, his SSJ-2 aura fading, his body broken, but his spirit whole. The planet was saved, but the cost was high. Goku was dead, Future Trunks was dead, though the Dragon Balls could fix that. And Omni-Man was gone. The alien, he was a strange one, Piccolo observed, looking at the scorched earth where Omni-Man had last stood. Arrogant, brutal, but in the end, he chose to protect us. He chose the will of a warrior over the pride of a conqueror. Vegeta, however, remained silent. He merely looked at the destroyed landscape, his arms crossed. He had seen the raw, efficient power of the Viltrumite, Kairage embodied, transformation, and the cold, unyielding power of the Zenkai boost on Super Perfect Cell. He had witnessed the peak of SSJ-2 and the necessary sacrifice of a fellow Saiyan. I am the prince of all Saiyans. I will not be surpassed by a soft-hearted brat or an arrogant alien. Vegeta swore an oath. He would not rest until he surpassed the peak of Gohan's power and surpassed the limits of the dead Viltrumite's brute strength. Meanwhile, far away in the void of space, beyond the range of even the most powerful ki sense on Earth, a tiny, fractured piece of matter was drifting. It was not Cell, it was a single, heavily damaged piece of Viltrumite tissue that had been blasted away from Omni-Man's body during the explosion. The Viltrumite biology, unlike any other in the universe, possessed an extraordinary power, the ability to regenerate from a single cell, much like Cell's Namekian cells. Omni-Man was not dead, he was merely dispersed. It took weeks for the minuscule fragment to drift towards a nearby, uninhabited planetoid, a desolate, rocky, minor world with a surprisingly dense atmosphere and a massive, active blue sun. The intense solar radiation, far greater than that of Earth, provided the perfect, potent energy source. The Viltrumite cell began to regenerate, slowly reconstructing Omni-Man's body, bone by bone, muscle by muscle, Kai system by Kai system. The process was agonizingly slow, forcing Omni-Man's consciousness into a state of suspended animation, but his internal core remained active. As he regenerated, his body was not merely returning to its original state. His biological system, which had been physically augmented and spiritually scarred by his exposure to Kai and the Dragon Ball universe's power scaling, was undergoing a forced, cosmic Zenkai boost. He had died fighting a force of ultimate perfection, and now he was being reborn with the power he had needed to win. After almost a year in a near-death regenerative coma, Omni-Man's body was complete. He stood on the desolate planet, naked, his armor gone, but his physical form was more imposing than ever. The familiar quiet hum of his Kai was now a constant, raging torrent. He focused his energy, and his entire body pulsed with an immense, uncontrollable force. But this time, it was not the violet hue of his first ki adaptation, nor the white-hot rage of his temporary transformation. It was a golden, shimmering, stable Super Saiyan aura mixed with the unique, aggressive white of his Viltrumite will. Omni-Man had achieved the impossible. His physical body, his internal will, and the cosmic Zenkai boost had forced a biological transformation into a state that mirrored the Super Saiyan form. He had not done it through Saiyan DNA, but through the will to surpass limits, and a full-body ki adaptation, the true spirit of the Dragon Ball universe. He was now Viltrumite Prime, a physical powerhouse with an exponential ki multiplier. He was ready for a rematch. He concentrated, focusing on the strong Kai signature of the Saiyan Prince, who had challenged and insulted him. He executed a perfect instant transmission, teleporting from the desolate blue sun planet to the one place in the universe he knew his rival would be. The Z fighters were enjoying a moment of relative peace on Earth, a calm born of the Dragon Balls having been used to resurrect all those killed by Cell, including future Trunks and Android 17. Vegeta, however, was not at peace. He was in his private, state-of-the-art gravity chamber at Capsule Corp, training at an insane 400x Earth's gravity, pushing his body to the point of collapse, driven by his consuming need to surpass Gohan's SSJ2 power. Vegeta was mid-final flash charge, his Super Saiyan aura flickering from exhaustion, when a sudden, thunderous spike in ki shattered the chamber's delicate machinery. Crack! The reinforced metal walls of the gravity chamber buckled, the gravity field collapsed, and a figure appeared in the center of the smoking wreckage. It was Omni-Man, his crimson armor replaced by a simple, black guy, his body radiating a palpable, violent aura that was a controlled fusion of cyan gold and Viltrumite white. His hair was still black, but his eyes glowed with the intense, emerald green light of pure power. He was Viltrumite Prime. Vegeta staggered back, his jaw dropping in genuine shock. His ki sense screamed at him. The being before him was exponentially stronger than the brute who had died at the Cell Games. "Impossible! The Kamehameha! You were vaporized!" Vegeta sputtered, reverting to his base form from sheer mental fatigue. "My physical durability, Prince, is not bound by the limitations of your biology," Omni-Man responded, his voice deeper, calmer, and laced with a new, terrifying confidence. "My core regenerated, and the exposure to death and Kai forced a complete biological and spiritual evolution. I died a weak-willed brute, and I was reborn a warrior of this universe." Omni-Man floated slightly, demonstrating the absolute mastery of Kai that had once eluded him. "I found a sun that forced my regeneration at an accelerated rate, and my body forced itself into a state that mirrors your legendary power. I call it Viltrumite Prime, the full power of my biology, married to the purity of ki adaptation." Vegeta's initial shock quickly dissolved into furious, envious rage. You dare to cheat death, steal the Zenkai boost that belongs to the Saiyans, and mimic the power of the Super Saiyan transformation. You are an abomination." Vegeta instantly transformed, skipping the standard Super Saiyan form and ascending directly to his peak, ascended Super Saiyan. "I am the Prince of all Saiyans. I will not allow a filthy alien to surpass my potential." The challenge was met instantly. Omni-Man grinned, a dangerous, confident smile. He didn't use a dramatic transformation. He merely released his contained power. Boom! The force of his Viltrumite Prime power release shattered the entire gravity chamber facility, ripping the reinforced roof off Capsule Corp and sending tons of debris flying into the sky. The two fighters engaged in a battle that dwarfed their previous encounter. Vegeta, now fighting with the full, desperate fury of his pride, launched a blinding rapid-fire succession of Kai blasts and physical strikes. Omni-Man met the onslaught with physical ease, his Viltrumite Prime body easily absorbing the damage. His speed was now comparable to Vegeta's Super Saiyan speed, allowing him to counter the Saiyan Prince's famous blitzes. "You're too slow, Prince," Omni-Man mocked, catching a fierce Vegeta punch and twisting the Saiyan's arm with casual ease. "Your ascended Super Saiyan form is a flaw. Too much muscle, too little speed. I retained my velocity while gaining the exponential power." Vegeta roared in fury and unleashed a full-power, Big Bang attack at point-blank range. Omni-Man met the colossal sphere of energy with a concentrated Viltrumite Prime Nova Beam, a violet beam that was now 1,000 times more focused and potent than his previous attempt. The beams collided in a localized apocalyptic explosion. Vegeta was forced backward, his armor smoking, his pride shattered by the power parity. Omni-Man, seeing his opportunity, pressed the attack. He blitzed Vegeta, hitting him with a devastating combination of a solar plexus punch and a final, focused Kai strike that felt like a spirit bomb compressed into a fist. Vegeta was sent plummeting through the earth, leaving a trench a mile long. He emerged seconds later, battered, bloody, and defeated, struggling to maintain his ascended Super Saiyan form.
"This cannot be,"
Vegeta gasped, his energy fading.
I am the Prince of all Saiyans."
Omni-Man landed in front of the beaten prince. "Your strength is not a given, Vegeta. It is earned, and it is surpassed. I have learned the core truth of this universe. There is always a higher plateau." He extended his hand, the very same gesture Goku had offered him 1 year ago. "I did not come back to conquer this planet. I came back for a rematch to prove your philosophy correct. You forced me to surpass my limits. Now, you must surpass yours." Vegeta, his pride at war with his survival instinct, looked at the offered hand. He saw the genuine warrior's respect in Omni-Man's emerald eyes. The Viltrumite had not returned for revenge or conquest. He had returned for rivalry. He accepted the hand, but instead of shaking it, he grasped Omni-Man's wrist with the intensity of a man making a lifelong vow. "You have earned my respect, Viltrumite," Vegeta growled, forcing himself back to his feet. "But this is not over. That power, that Super Saiyan aura, it only means you have reached the start of the true power. I will go to a place where you cannot follow. I will reach the power of the gods." Omni-Man nodded, his face stern. "Then I will train in your shadow until The defeat of Super Perfect Cell was the defining moment for Omni-Man. He had arrived as a cynical conqueror and left a willing student of endless improvement. His rematch with Vegeta served to solidify his new power status, Viltrumite Prime, and establish him as a permanent, powerful rival to the Saiyans, operating on a level comparable to the Super Saiyan power bracket. Omni-Man and Vegeta began an immediate, intensely competitive training regimen. Vegeta, driven by the desire to regain his supremacy, pushed himself and Omni-Man to insane degrees. Their training consisted primarily of sparring matches under crushing gravity, where Vegeta's precise ki techniques forced Omni-Man to constantly hone his Nova Beam into a more versatile flowing energy weapon, while Omni-Man's physical durability forced Vegeta to push his Kai output to the point of collapse. One afternoon, during a particularly violent sparring match that resulted in the complete obliteration of a private testing range, a curious observer appeared. Whis. The angel attendant to the god of destruction Beerus hovered silently above the smoking crater, his staff held casually in his hand. He had been sent to Earth by Beerus, who had sensed two powerful and unique energy signatures. One, the familiar, rising Saiyan ki of his future rival, and the other, a completely alien ki that pulsed with a raw, primal energy unlike any mortal he had sensed. "Oh dear," Whis chirped, his voice smooth and melodic, yet carrying an undertone of cosmic authority. "Such a mess, and all for a simple sparring match. Lord Beerus is going to be very upset about the energy expenditure." Vegeta instantly stopped, recognizing the presence of the being who had the power to casually erase him from existence. He reverted to his base form and bowed, his pride momentarily suppressed by sheer, terrifying deference. "Lord Whis, we apologize for the disturbance. We were merely training." Whis chuckled, his eyes fixed on Omni-Man, who remained hovering in his Viltrumite Prime state, his emerald eyes narrowed in suspicion. "And who might this powerful mortal be?" Whis asked, tilting his head. "His Kai signature is fascinating, so aggressive, so entirely physical in its delivery, yet refined enough to be a contained, continuous force, a curious fusion of brute strength and Saiyan-style power." Omni-Man, having never encountered a being whose power level surpassed his own by such an infinite, incomprehensible margin, remained defiant. He sensed no physical threat from Whis, but an existential one, a being who could simply choose for him to not exist. "I am Omni-Man of the now reformed Viltrum Empire," Omni-Man declared, refusing to bow, "and I am here to surpass the limits of this universe's mortals." Whis's smile widened. "Indeed, the will to improve is strong in you. That is a trait Lord Beerus appreciates and occasionally destroys." He then focused his gaze on Vegeta. "Lord Beerus has sensed the increase in your power, Vegeta. He is quite pleased. He wishes for both you and your new rival to train with him at his planet. He requires an endless supply of strong opponents to keep him from being bored." Vegeta's eyes widened in ecstatic realization. This was the opening he needed, the path to God Kai. He instantly accepted. "We accept, Lord Whis. We will depart immediately," Vegeta exclaimed, already planning how to use the Angel's training to leave Omni-Man permanently in his dust. Omni-Man, however, had reservations. He had survived the Cell Games through his own will, not through a master's teaching. "I do not require a teacher, Angel," Omni-Man stated, his voice firm. "My strength comes from my own will to improve." Whis merely winked, his tone light, but carrying a powerful truth. "Ah, but your strength came from adapting to a Saiyan transformation, did it not? You have reached the mortal pinnacle of ki absorption. To go further, you must learn to manipulate the Kai of a destroyer. You must learn God Ki." Whis tapped his staff on the ground. "Your Viltrumite prime form is powerful, but it is still mortal. God Ki is a realm where energy is so perfectly contained that it cannot be sensed by mortals. If you wish to surpass Vegeta's new heights, you will have to join us. Lord Beerus has very little patience for arrogant aliens who refuse to learn." The mention of God Ki, a power so refined it defied the very ki sense that had been his key to victory, was the final, necessary challenge. Omni-Man realized that his Viltrumite prime form, while being a new limit, was just the base for the next exponential surge. The only way to win the rivalry against Vegeta and to survive the inevitable return of Frieza or the emergence of greater cosmic threats was to transcend his mortal limits completely. "Very well, Angel," Omni-Man conceded, his voice heavy with reluctant commitment. "I will join your training, but I will not be your servant. I will be your greatest pupil, and I will be the one to surpass your destroyer." Whis smiled, completely unperturbed by the threat. "That is the proper attitude. Now let us go. Lord Beerus is waiting, and he is a fiend for earthly instant noodles. Do you happen to have any good recipes?" A moment later, Whis tapped his staff, and the three warriors disappeared, instantly traveling across the vastness of the cosmos to Beerus's planet. The new chapter of Omni-Man's journey had begun. The rivalry with Vegeta would now ascend to the divine, a competitive. The training on Beerus's planet was an existential shock to Omni-Man's system. He was accustomed to the crushing physical intensity of the hyperbolic time chamber and the brutal, gravity-enhanced sparring with Vegeta. But Whis's training was a bizarre fusion of menial chores and impossible physical conditioning. For months, as time passed instantly on Earth, Omni-Man and Vegeta were forced to clean the massive, perpetually dirty planet, serve Beerus's increasingly demanding culinary tastes, and carry immense, impossibly heavy objects while maintaining perfect Kai concentration. "Your Viltrumite prime form is a masterpiece of aggressive ki channeling," Whis explained one afternoon, watching Omni-Man struggle to carry a massive 100-ton block of Kachi-Kachin metal with one hand. "But it is inefficient. Your power is too loud. God Ki is the opposite. It is silent. It is perfectly contained. It is a transformation of the spirit into a destroyer's calm, focused intent. Vegeta, meanwhile, was excelling at the containment exercises, utilizing his natural Saiyan pride and focus to internalize his energy. He had achieved the first step. He had learned to manipulate God Kai, his aura shimmering with a new crimson color. Omni-Man, however, struggled. His Viltrumite biology and philosophy were too loud. He was inherently aggressive. His power had always been external. He found it nearly impossible to turn the raging torrent of his Viltrumite prime energy inward into the perfect, unreadable calm of God Kai. You fail because you still cling to your past, Omni-Man. Beerus, the god of destruction, taunted one day after obliterating a large section of the planet with a single, contemptuous Hakai energy sphere. You still believe your power is to protect or to conquer, but true power, the power of a destroyer, is born of the will to erase all things, even the concept of limits. Your intent is too good. The truth of the statement hit Omni-Man like a physical blow. Vegeta's pure, consuming pride and anger were a cleaner path to the controlled, destructive malice of God Kai. Omni-Man's core drive, now solidified as the need to protect his chosen world and his rival, was an impediment. He was reaching a plateau. His Viltrumite prime power was magnificent, but he was unable to ascend to the next divine tier of existence. Then Whis gave him the final challenge, a direct confrontation with Beerus. "Your training is incomplete, Omni-Man," Whis stated, observing the tired, frustrated Viltrumite. "You need a catalyst. Engage Lord Beerus. Force him to fight. If you can force him to exert a fraction of his power, I will show you the secret of God Ki." Omni-Man knew it was a suicide mission. Beerus's power was an infinite void, but the challenge and the desire to surpass Vegeta was enough. He engaged Beerus, attacking with every ounce of his current strength. He launched a barrage of concentrated Viltrumite prime nova beams, following up with an immediate, Kai-reinforced physical blitz that hit the god of destruction with the force of an exploding sun. Beerus merely yawned, effortlessly dodging every physical attack with the autonomous movement of Ultra Instinct and catching Omni-Man's most powerful Nova Beam on a single, extended finger. "Pitiful," Beerus muttered. "Such a loud, messy display of energy. You are wasting your potential, mortal." Beerus then retaliated with a single, lightning-fast tap. Not a destructive attack, but a focused, erasing blow of Hakai energy that struck Omni-Man's abdomen. The effect was instantaneous and agonizing. Omni-Man screamed as the Hakai energy, the very Kai of destruction, began to erase the Viltrumite's cells at the molecular level. He was not being heard, he was being unmade. Whis intervened instantly, halting the Hakai with a gentle wave of his staff, but the lesson was complete. Omni-Man collapsed, his body trembling, facing a threat that no amount of physical strength could overcome. The only thing that could stop Hakai was God Ki. As he lay defeated, Vegeta, watching from the sidelines, finally stepped forward. He knelt next to his fallen rival, placing a hand on the Viltrumite's shoulder. "The power of a god is not for brutes, Omni-Man," Vegeta said, his voice quiet. "It is for those who accept the terror of their own power. You must accept that your strength is not to protect. It is to overwhelm. You must find your own destructive truth." The words echoed in Omni-Man's mind. Destructive truth. He closed his eyes, visualizing the moment the Hakai energy tried to erase him. He didn't fight the destructive energy, he embraced it. He channeled the aggressive, conquering instinct of his original Viltrumite self, the absolute zero of super-perfect Cell's malice, and the casual, terrifying power of Beerus's Hakai. He accepted the ultimate, terrifying truth. His power must be the power of destruction, not merely defense. In that instant, Omni-Man's raging Viltrumite Prime aura vanished. It was replaced by a smooth, deep, crimson-blue aura, a controlled, completely unreadable energy field that wrapped his body in absolute stillness. He rose, not with a roar, but with a quiet, confident calm. He had achieved his own version of God Kai, a fusion of Viltrumite will and Hakai adaptation. "I am ready, Whis," Omni-Man stated, his voice now imbued with the authority of a warrior who had transcended his own mortality. "Show me the next step." The rivalry had reached the divine. Omni-Man and Vegeta stood shoulder to shoulder, two different paths to God Ki, now united in the pursuit of a power that would allow them to finally challenge their own teachers. Word count, 1000. Awaiting conclusion. Omni-Man's journey from arrogant conqueror to Ki-adapted warrior had fundamentally altered the power structure of Universe 7. He had arrived a victim of his own physical philosophy, only to be reborn as a true martial artist through the brutal crucible of the Cell, games and the intense, god-level training on Beerus's planet. His ultimate achievement of a unique Viltrumite God Ki state, a terrifying crimson-blue aura born of accepted destruction, was the final testament to his warrior's will. He had successfully fused the raw, physical supremacy of the Viltrumite Empire with the spiritual, exponential power of Dragon Ball's divine energy system. The immediate conflict with Cell was resolved, but the journey of endless improvement had just reached its first major milestone. Omni-Man was now a permanent, powerful third pillar of Universe 7's defense, his rivalry with Vegeta having elevated both warriors to the divine level. The two often sparred under Whis' watchful eye, their destructive Kai clashing in a beautiful, controlled storm. Vegeta, having successfully achieved Super Saiyan Blue, now saw Omni-Man as an equal to be constantly surpassed, a target that fueled his ferocious training. But the attainment of God Ki was not the end. It was a cosmic invitation. Whis smiled knowingly at their combined progress, hinting that the immense power surge in two new mortals had not gone unnoticed by the other universes. A new threat, the return of a vengeful Frieza with a golden form, or perhaps the ominous recruitment for a massive, universe-spanning competition like the Tournament of Power, now awaited the Viltrumite warrior. Omni-Man's new power would be the ultimate test against the assassins, destroyers, and absolute zero martial artists of the multiverse. His battles had only just begun. The adventure never ends. More stories awaits.